Hello, hello.
Hi, Lina.
What is this?
This is a call where we record our podcast. Hello, Lina. How are you doing?
Hi, Josh. Thank you. I am very good. Look at that. 20 seconds later, we're recording our first podcast.
Right. Do you want to tell our listeners why we are doing this podcast?
Absolutely. I mean, you and I met at EDEC. We both went to the same French business school. You gave me a call, said, hey, let's start a podcast. And here we are. It's a bit more complicated than this, but basically you and I were both young professionals and we went through the first hustle of, getting started in the job world. We took a lot of learnings on this way, and we think these are definitely worth sharing. That's why we call it stereotypos, stereotypical typos, basically. There's a lot of mistakes and learnings you undergo as a young professional, and we're doing this episode, or we're doing this podcast, better said, to invite inspirational leaders to talk about their stereotypos, their mistakes, their learnings. So this is episode 0. It's you and I just introducing ourselves and what this is about. But every other episode will be with a lot of inspiring people and guests that we'll invite to talk about their learnings and what they wish they knew before.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's also important to say that we are building more than a podcast over here. I mean, there is a podcast. That is still the central product. I mean, we want people to hear from our guests, of course. No, but we also are interested in this community where we add each of our guests who come in, we add them into the LinkedIn community, and we help people, students like us, but from 5 years ago, who were struggling because, let's be honest, we were struggling. And we did a couple of things, and why let go of those things? Let's just share those things with people for those who are struggling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because these job descriptions and polished CVs, of course they help, because without that you're not getting a job. But to be fair, we had those things and we're still not getting the interview calls. So building up our network is really everything. What do you think?
Exactly. I think you're pointing out a very, very interesting point here and a problem that we're trying to fix with this podcast. I mean, nowadays, some of the dynamics of the job market are broken, as I like to say it. It sounds a bit negative, but you can absolutely leverage that to your advantage. Today, it's not just about your nice CV or about, the roles that you had anymore. It's more about your personality, actually, and the way you bring it to the table, and second, your network. And these are things we're trying to create beyond this podcast as an asset with our LinkedIn group, having events there, networking events, events where eventually, our listeners can meet our speakers, where they can exchange among themselves. And this is the problem we're trying to fix with this podcast, and building much more than just the podcast, but actually building this community around it. I mean, you said it. What are degrees nowadays? They help, for sure. They are important, but they're not as important anymore as they were in the past. Because today you can just learn everything anywhere. So yeah, back to your point, network and experiences. This is what we're trying to build on this podcast.
Yeah, I remember one of these questions that I asked an interviewer at L'Oreal back after my interview. I asked them, how would you classify a successful hire? And for you, what is definitely a red flag that you will not hire? And something interesting that he said, it really stuck with me. And I was like, damn, that is so honest and that's so true. He said, well, I'll just cut to the chase and tell you exactly what's in my mind. The technical stuff you learn over time. I'm sure of that. It's impossible for you to survive here without that. So in 6 months, 8 months, you learn it. So that's really not what I'm looking for. And you're so young, I can't expect you to be an expert in anything at this point. Mm-hmm. But what I am looking for is that you bring a fun, can-do attitude to the table, that you bring a cheerful attitude. Like, I don't want to take a flight with you, that I don't think twice before partnering with you and working on anything, that you don't bring a sluggish, negative attitude. And I was like, yeah, that I do bring that into the table. That is my asset. So I would never put that on my CV, but it is hireable. So it's important for us to talk about these things and really hear from different people what is it that they want to hire. So of course, being ambitious over here, I want to build more than just a podcast, but maybe we'll have networking events in the future within our LinkedIn group as well. As we'll see how the momentum builds, and in time, if we have all the ingredients, then we'll go for it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And just as you said, this is actually an interesting question that came up to me a few times during my interviews too. Why should I spend, 20 minutes at the airport with you? And in your personal life, you would answer this question quite quickly with your friends, because you're fun, because, you care about cooking, you care about cultures, traveling. But all of a sudden, if you're talking to a professional, it's much harder to position you as a person, as a personality in the professional world. So at the end of the day, Porter's 5 forces only get you so far, and theory just doesn't align with the reality a lot of times. And there's millions of podcasts out there. So how do we make sure we're not, doing another version of the other 100 podcasts out there already? And what's our quality criteria? I mean, what did we come up with, Josh? How do we want to be?
Yeah, exactly. If we do nothing else, then we'll definitely promise you this, that it will be honest. So it'll be super authentic. It won't be a marketing fluff, that stuff people like to say and people like to hear, but really truth behind it. So authenticity. Secondly, we'll try our best to push our guests to give actionable feedback and not just, enlarged feedback of having a strong profile or having a good network. These things that you can't really build on by hearing those words, but having actionable feedback from them. We'll strive really hard for that. And above all, I think at least for Lina and I and our networks, and for you guys too, we are also striving for fun. If you're not having fun, we're doing it wrong. This is our quality policy.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, actually. To be very authentic here, we're recording this for the second time now because when we were just recording it, construction started in my house and you couldn't hear a word and we had to laugh very hard.
This part we had to record again.
This is the authentic part of, being on a podcast. So we're trying to be authentic, actionable and fun with this to give you the most value that we can with this podcast.
And now you'll go back to the part which we recorded before without the construction.
Yeah, let's get started. We're going to ask this question to our guest. But before we do this, let's ask each other what we wish we knew before. So Josh, what do you wish you knew before?
For me, what I'm really glad I knew at the right time was the capacity to learn French outside a classroom in a farm. And spoiler alert, it works. I'm glad I knew it at the right time. How about you, Lina?
Nice. And we'll get back to this later. I wish I knew the value of saying no, actually. I have to say I started as a complete people pleaser. And I think that's normal when you start your career. But once I learned the value of saying no and how to say no at the right time and how to say yes, a lot of things changed for me to the positive. But yeah, we're going to come back to this later. Josh, I think I met you at EDEC, or I don't think, I know I met you at EDEC, the business school we both went to. And the first time that I saw you was when you were on stage of a TEDx speech, and you were speaking about how languages can get you closer to your dreams. And one thing that stuck with me is you said your parents gave you donkey milk to drink, which enabled you to learn the language. This is what stuck with me, and I think you have a very fascinating journey behind you. So if you could fast backwards 5 years, what did you do and what did you learn during these years?
Oh, yeah, that's right. The donkey milk story is true, actually. Well, I finished engineering in India like every other Indian boy. I studied mechanical engineering in India. And then I started working with machines, with big machines, there are rooms inside the machines, And it was a nice job. It was fun. But I quickly realized that I don't see myself doing this for the next 20 years because I really thrive with human relationships. I thrive with making contacts, with speaking languages, talking to people. This is my jam. So if working with the machines was what my degree got me, that was not going to make me happy. So I realized that I want to go out and learn French because I had already begun it, but I didn't speak any. But that's how the dream to come to France was born. And a couple of internships down the line, I came to business school in France, EDEC Business School, and I did a couple of internships. And cracking the first job market was really difficult. The first job was difficult to convince the employer that I can do it when there's no cultural fit, when there's no expertise, when they can hire a European to do it without any paperwork troubles. So that was the journey that I went through, and now I'm really glad that I went through all of these things and I'm happy where I'm at.
Nice. Okay. And was it a bad cultural shock for you to come to Europe?
The first year was really difficult for me. I'd love to go into detail with this, but it goes into emotional health and stuff, which is maybe not the topic of this episode 0. But yeah, no, the first year was really difficult for me to cope. And the second year and third year, and slowly it started getting easier. But for me, Lina, I think the first time when I met you and when I knew you, I reached out to you, was when you had this event called Catch Up. I heard from the alumni event that EDEC alumni group that you had this event called Catch Up, that you were helping your classmates who are in the same year as you, helping them to network and helping them to find internships and stuff. And this really caught my eye because this Oscar Wilde quote came to my mind. All of us are in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. So for you to be among your classmates but still be proactive and find solutions instead of complaining, that really stuck with me, and that's when I thought that we're a little similar on that. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and your journey the last couple of years?
Absolutely. So I think actually two things that characterize me is, first of all, I like challenges and I like networking. And being in the midst of a pandemic back then, this is the biggest challenge you can find, networking, being isolated in your room. That's why we came up with this association, and that's how we met. I remember we were inviting you as an alumni, and you were already telling very inspiring stories back then. So I'm originally from Germany. I would say I'm an adventurer and a sports lover by heart. That's also why I like challenges so much, and that's, I think, why I'm also such a team-driven person. Basically, my whole background is business, and I found the edge, or I found the way to innovation very quickly. I was working in a corporate innovation role, and I always loved being at this edge of corporations and startups, because this is really where interesting things are happening. This is really where challenging things are happening and where you can drive progress. Very soon decided to go back to do my master, actually. And yeah, the choice came back to France, to Lyon more specifically, because it's a very interesting, international environment. I always loved the language of French, even though I'm not as good as you yet. But that's my story. And I think, looking at you, looking at me, we couldn't be more different in the way that, you come from India, I come from Germany, very different backgrounds. But at the same time, there's a lot of similarities, which puts us, I guess, in the spot to do this podcast. We both struggled at some point. We both succeeded eventually. And now we're sharing ours and our guests' experience of how we got there.
Yeah. So I really want to ask you, now that we are done with the what, who, why, where, and all those important questions, what really stuck with me also was the company Apple. They say this, their strength was with saying no to the right things. Like, if you know them, they are excellent at marketing. So they could have become a marketing consultancy firm as well, a small little daughter company that only does marketing videos for others because they do it well. But they don't get into it. They don't make cameras. They can. Mm-hmm. Their iPhone cameras are good. But yeah, they consistently keep saying no to things, and that's really so powerful for them. They are so valuable today. So I want to hear, what do you feel when you say this? What do you mean by this, the value of saying no? What does it mean to you?
Absolutely. Very nice example. So to me, to be very honest, when I started working, I was a total people pleaser. And I think that's what a lot of young people are when they start their job, because they don't know their direction yet. They don't necessarily have an opinion on a lot of things, and they also don't have a lot of assets yet, skills and knowledge. So that's, I think, totally normal. But what really a turning point for me was to understand at some point, the value of saying no to things. And this is because of different reasons. First of all, you gotta guard your resources, right? You only have limited, working day. You have limited time, and you gotta be very smart in where you put your time. And the more you specify in what you put your time in, and you prioritize, and it needs to be aligned with your goals. So you need to know, what are my goals? What am I trying to reach? What is my job roles goals? job roles goals. And the better you know this, the better you can also decide on where you invest your time. And it will be even more effective. So that's how it is with goals, right? The better you know them, the better you can invest in them. So saying no to certain things that you don't want to do makes you even better in things you want to do and sharpens your position. And this is the second point. As a young professional, you have to learn to form a position and to form an opinion on a lot of things. This took me some time, but if you actively try to do this, it's going to be easier to say yes and no to certain things because you have your own opinion. And this is extremely important, and also extremely valued, I would say. So be smart in where you invest your time, sharpen your opinion, sharpen your position. You and I are in a very luxury position. We have plenty of jobs to choose from. That's just because, the human resources are limited at this time, and the jobs, there's tons of them. So not everyone is in such a luxury position, but a lot of people are. And when you are in this position, you need to learn to say no to opportunities, because they might not guide you the way you want to go. And I had to learn this a lot of times, but I think I'm getting better at it. And I see it actually actively sharpening my career. So if you're out there listening to this, just give it a try. Say no if colleagues ask you for something that really doesn't pay into your role and your ambitions, and see how they react. And usually it's not even that bad.
Yeah. No, this is... Now that you say all this, what you just said, I start thinking about how I've applied this in my own life. I remember at one point, I was asked in my previous job to learn this computer language SQL, and that I absolutely need that, and without that I cannot survive in IT. And I think it was really taking a step back and talking to a senior who's done this before and sitting down and having a heartfelt conversation. I told him, I don't know what I'm doing, I need your help. And he said, well, you don't need SQL to succeed. Of course, the people who want you to learn SQL will tell you that, but you got to choose that for yourself. If you're interested and excited about it, go. And if you're not, then don't. And I asked him, how do I work with this? They're asking me to do this now. I'm going to lose my job. How do I work with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And then Josh, you at the beginning, you were talking also about what you wish you knew before, and it was also related to learning French. Do you want to explain a bit more on that?
My identity, I think, is a lot to do with language learning back home in India, and I wanted to conserve it when I moved to France. And if someone has been here for 5 years and doesn't speak French, then that identity is taken away from him. He's no longer the language learning guy he claims to be, So for me, it was really about my identity, and it was more important for me than my grades. It was more important than anything to succeed in the language thing in France. Even if I'm going back to India, it's fine, but I need to learn French. That's a must-have. So I tried to think about how I learned the first few languages I did. I spoke about this in my TED Talk as well. It was not with a book and a pen. It was out in the field. So I did that metaphorical field literally. I went to a field, a farmhouse, and I learned French over there. And it was just so much fun to hang out with people and speak French every day for 10-15 hours a day and learn it that way. And I was also having this little mental block that nobody wants to be my friend. I think this a lot of foreigners face when they come to Europe, and I don't think Europeans are mean people, but just that they don't come with the same need as a foreigner comes to Europe. So I came with this need to make friends, and the language was not helping. So just unlocking the language in the farm gave me so many meaningful friendships. I'm invited to their weddings, to their private Christmas parties at home. So this really unlocks a whole new cultural aspect or social aspect as well for me. Yeah,
absolutely. And I just learned you're basically on the pro level now, because you can even tell jokes in French, which is really stunning. I cannot even tell jokes in German, so kudos to that.
Yeah, I love comedy. Yeah,
nice. Well, perfect. There we go. First episode, or I would say episode 0. And I couldn't be more excited for what's to come and for our next guest. Do you already know who we will invite?
Yeah, we have a list, don't we? A nice little Google Sheets list. But yeah, I think I want to keep it as a surprise for our listeners that they tune into our next episode.
But I think here's also our cue, guys, to point out to you that we have a LinkedIn group. You can reach out to us on LinkedIn on our private accounts, of course, but there's also a LinkedIn group with the same name as the podcast, Stereotypos, where we'll be sharing additional content that we speak about. We'll be sharing the links for each episode, and also we'll be sharing the profile of our guests.
Absolutely. So that being said, thank you very much, Josh. This was fun, and I'm very excited for episode 1. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Stereotypos is so much more than just a podcast, so don't forget to join our LinkedIn group called Stereotypos, where you can find even more content, network with our speakers and other inspirational career starters. You'll also find the video versions of our podcast on YouTube. All links in the description. Stay tuned for the next episode and see you around.